Hey guys, thanks for checking out this episode of Tales from a Small Town Journalist, the podcast dedicated to all the weird and wonderful stories you are only going to hear about from reporters working in small communities. Small communities a lot like yours. I'm Matt Shore, and I was a full-time journalist for almost 10 years before I finally hung up my camera and my notepad, and in that time, I had some really unique and interesting experiences working with the public. And I realized that there are probably a lot of other reporters out there who had some similarly unique experiences, and thus was the brainchild of this little podcast. Before I go any further, I do want to make sure and mention that this is a listener-supported podcast, supported by listeners just like you. One of the all-time great ways that you can support us is by spreading the word. Use Twitter, use Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever you use. Let people know all about this crazy, weird little podcast done by a journalist, talking to journalists and just telling you all of their stories. Tell a friend, tell a loved one, tell some random person on the street, because person-to-person word of mouth is the absolute best. Give them a good shake, like I always say, and tell them that they absolutely have to check out this crazy little podcast by Matt Shore called Tales from a Small Town Journalist. As everybody knows, this is the spooky month of October, and so the Shore Manor podcast, our sister podcast that I do with my wife, is in full swing right now, so make sure you check that out if you're into that sort of thing. And anybody who knows me, knows my wife, knows that we are going all out this month for Halloween, as we do every single year. That is our Christmas. So anybody in the area, if you're into Halloween, check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Shore Manor. But in the meantime, sticking with the journalism side of things for this podcast, I thought shifting gears just a little bit would be an interesting thing to do and check out some of the spookier news stories out there. I myself don't really have any personal experiences that I can give you that would be considered spooky or eerie or whatever, but there are actual news articles out there that relate to this sort of thing, and I combed through a lot of them to try to find something that I thought was really appropriate, not just for Halloween, but also for the purposes of this podcast. I didn't want to just go to any random blog or what have you. I wanted to go to some reputable sources, some legitimate news sites that reported things over the years that actually were kind of a little bit on the spooky or the eerie side. And I put together a nice little list here, and some of them are spooky, some of them are amusing, which fits right in with this podcast. So without further ado, let's jump right into one of the spookier articles that I was able to come across. Is this grocery store haunted? Ghost sighting at Wilmington Market basket goes viral. This little article was published by NBC Boston earlier this year, in fact, on March 26th. A ghost sighting at Massachusetts Market basket has created a stir as customers keep a lookout for the Victorian-era specter in the frozen food aisle. The grocery store in Wilmington was drawn into the spotlight this month after one of its employees posted about her ghost sighting in a local Facebook group. Christiana Bush, who works in the store's bakery department, claims to have seen an older woman in Victorian-era nightgown and hair cap standing in the frozen food aisle. Bush looked down, and when she looked back up, she said the woman had disappeared. Quote, "She looked kind of melancholy and a little angry, so it was kind of creepy in a kind of sense, but it was something," Bush said Monday. She searched up and down the aisles to find the woman, but Bush said she was nowhere to be found. She believes the woman was a ghost and asked the Facebook group whether anyone else had a paranormal experience in her store. Quote, "This is going to sound really strange, but has anyone seen a ghost in the Wilmington Market basket?" she wrote. The post attracted plenty of attention from both believers and skeptics, but others also claimed to have seen something ghostly in the grocery store. It soon became the talk of the town. Quote, "I had no idea it was going to blow up," she said. I just posted a random status on Facebook saying, 'Hey, has anyone seen a ghost?' because I just wanted to connect with people." Customers at the store Monday were aware of the ghost story and were on the hunt to see if they could catch a glimpse of the rumored visitor. Quote, "We are looking. We are trying to find her, but we haven't seen her," said Tiffany from Bellarica. "Maybe she is from the area. Maybe she is looking for someone. Maybe she's just not crossed over." Others are not so sure that anything paranormal is happening in the store. Quote, "I just don't believe in ghosts," said Dawn from Wilmington. "I've been coming here for 35 years and haven't seen a ghost." Market Basket officials say that, to their knowledge, their stores are free from ghostly visitors. Quote, "As far as we know, all of our stores are ghost-free," said Justine Griffin, a spokesperson for the company. "But if there's anything to it, she's probably attracted to our Victorian-era prices." Bush said she had never believed in ghosts, but this experience definitely changed her mind. She hopes to one day see the ghostly woman again and maybe even strike up a conversation. Quote, "I guess I would want her to come back maybe, and I could talk to her," she said. "I don't know if you can talk to ghosts, but I think it would be cool to see what she is up to." I'm not sure what's more frightening about that article. The thought of a ghost in a grocery store, or the way the spokesperson really shamelessly worked in that plug there toward the end of the article. Anywho, moving on into other news. This one was in the USA Today, May 17th of 2012. Teen finds finger in Arbys sandwich. A customer at an Arbys in Michigan got a little more than roast beef in his sandwich last week when he bit into a piece of a finger, the Jackson Citizen Patriot reports. The gentleman tells the newspaper he was almost done with the sandwich when he tasted something rubbery. He spat it out and saw the back of a finger extending beyond the first knuckle. His reaction, quote, "I was about to puke, and it was just nasty." Steve Hall, Environmental Health Director for the Jackson County Health Department, tells the Citizen Patriot an Arbys employee had sliced her finger while operating a meat slicer and left her station without immediately telling anyone what happened. Other workers were filling an order before they became aware of the situation, Hall says. The restaurant did not close. Quote, "Somebody loses a finger, and you keep sending food out the window? I can't believe that," says the gentleman's mother. She tells the paper the store was packed at the time and, quote, "they should have shut it down." John Gray, Vice President for Corporate Communication for Arbys Restaurant Group, says that upon learning of the, quote, "isolated and unfortunate accident," the restaurant stopped food production and thoroughly cleaned and sanitized the restaurant. Arbys wants to reassure customers that we are committed to providing quality food in a safe and healthy environment. We are deeply concerned and apologetic to the guests involved in this unfortunate incident, Gray says in a statement. The gentleman in question tells the Citizen Patriot he is feeling fine and normal, but a little concerned. Quote, "He hasn't been able to sleep very good. He's really worried lately, and he doesn't want to catch anything," the gentleman's mother says. She says her son is, quote, "traumatized." All right, so that article was gross. Brings new meaning to the term chicken fingers, right? Okay, that's a terrible joke. I apologize. So, moving on to other news that is quite a bit less gross, but certainly no less creepy. This one came out on October 11th of 2017 from Today. School security camera captures creepy footage. Is it a ghost? An Irish school might have some ghosts among its student body. Surveillance cameras captured some spooky happenings in a hallway at 3 a.m. on October 1st at Deer Park CBS School in Cork, Ireland, just a few weeks before Halloween. Lockers shake, papers fly, doors slam, and a plastic sign on the floor flops over without a person in sight. Upon first seeing the footage, Deer Park Deputy Principal Aaron Wolf sent the clip to Principal Kevin Berry in disbelief. Quote, "We couldn't understand how this had occurred," Wolf told Today in an email. "If it's a prank, it's very well done." Wolf came to the school last year and was informed by staff of strange happenings in the past, from hallways being unnaturally cold to sounds of crying. Quote, "Many people have contacted us with stories about the school being haunted," he said. Luckily, the school doesn't have any sort of creepy backstory that could suggest paranormal activity. Quote, "The school is built on a site known as Green Gallows," Wolf said. "In the 19th century, criminals were hanged here. We only found that out on Monday. The pub nearby is actually called the Gallows. There's a Halloween event at school coming up called Fear Park, leaving the possibility that it was in fact a prank. Quote, "People have suggested that we've used green screen or edited someone out," Wolf said. "I wish our school had these types of resources. Others have suggested that fishing line is used. I don't see how fishing line could open the lockers because the locker doors don't say close unless the latch on it is turned. Also, the corridor is on the first floor and the window there behind the locker doesn't open. However, anything is possible. Wolf doesn't believe the school is haunted, but he may want to stay out of dark hallways late at night before Halloween. Quote, "A medium has contacted us to say that something will happen to me one night that will make me a believer," he said. Okay, this is going to sound weird, but I kind of wish I could be a student at that school. Maybe I'm just strange in this sense, but the idea of witnessing a ghost or something paranormal or anything like that, I find that thought exciting, whereas other folks might find it scary. I don't know, maybe I'm just weird that way, but anyway, best not to dwell on that because, it's not going to happen, so let's just move on to our next spooky headline. Terrifying vampire fish falling from the sky in Alaska. This one was published by CBS News on June 9th of 2015. Over the last week, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game has gotten some strange calls from Fairbanks residents seeing scary-looking fish dropping to the ground from above. Quote, "The local Value Village store found a live lamprey in their parking lot," Alaska Department of Fish and Game reported on its Facebook page. Another resident called and said he found one on his lawn. It was surely a scary surprise. Looking more like eels or snakes than regular fish, lampreys don't have scales or fins and can grow to 15 inches long. Instead of jaws, an adult lamprey has a disc-like mouth filled with small, sharp teeth. Adults clamp their mouths into other fish, then use their teeth and tongues to rasp through the scales to feed on blood and fluids. The lamprey releases and drops off after the meal. Some fish die from the attacks, but in many cases they survive, according to the Fish and Game Department. Quote, "Commercial and subsistence fishers throughout Alaska are quite familiar with the telltale, dime-sized circular scars on salmon and trout that have been fed upon by lampreys. Reportedly, lampreys are a tasty catch in their own right. Needless to say, the fish is not usually found on land. In fact, most people have never seen the elusive fish up close. Lampreys are born on freshwater, then move on to the ocean as adults. They return to their rivers of birth to spawn, including the Chena River, which runs along the south side of Fairbanks. Wildlife officials believe seagulls are picking up the squirmy fish there, only to drop them later in surprising and unlikely places. So far, 4 lampreys have been found on land." I looked up some pictures of lampreys after that article, and they are truly the stuff of nightmares. These are disgusting, scary-looking little fish. The Sci-Fi Channel, I'm kind of surprised they haven't honed in on this story and done something with it, because there is definitely something there. Rather than another Sharknado sequel, we really need something with flying radioactive lampreys coming after people. That would, I think there's a definite movie to be made there. Anyway, speaking of my excitement about trying to meet a ghost, that's part of why this next article really fascinated me. This is Interview with a Ghost, and it was published by the Irish Examiner quite a while back. On the evening of Sunday, January 17th, 1932, police were called to Trinity Street, Belfast, where a crowd of 3,000 had gathered to confront a ghost at one of the houses there. On hearing this, a Northern Whig journalist left immediately for Trinity Street, not to cover the story, but to interview the ghost. When he got there, he elbowed his way through the crowd, charmed the policeman guarding the haunted house, and was soon chatting with the 3 families who called it home. The ghost, they explained, took the form of a thin man dressed in a dark robe, and it would move silently about the house, walking through walls in the traditional manner. And while the ghost was likely to be found in any part of the house, they believed it had taken up residence in the attic. The journalist convinced some of the residents to take him to the top of the house, and after traversing the, quote, barricade of string that some of the men had created to prevent the ghost from opening the doors and coming downstairs, they arrived in the darkness of the attic, where they waited and waited. But the ghost never came back. I really like that article because that just so seems like something I would try to do. If someone came to me saying that we have a ghost in our house and we want it reported on, could I interview the ghost? No doubt I probably would have had the same result, but I would have at least tried. So moving on to other weird and bizarre news, this one was published on August 14th, 2019. Someone left old TVs outside 50 homes in Virginia while wearing a TV on his head, and no one knows why. It was kind of like Christmas, except it was August. The only presents were vintage television sets, and Santa had a TV on his head. Residents of more than 50 households in Henrico County, Virginia, woke up this weekend to find old-style TVs outside their doorsteps, said Matt Pekka, a lieutenant with the local police department. Pekka said police began receiving reports about the TVs early Sunday. By the morning, their phones were clogged with calls. Quote, everyone started coming out of their houses, walking around the neighborhood looking at the TVs there on their doorsteps, said Jean Brooksbank, who lives in the Hampshire neighborhood. It was very Twilight Zone. Each home received exactly one TV, carefully placed so it faced inward toward the door, Brooksbank said. Some deliveries were caught on residents' doorbell cameras, and that's where things got truly bizarre. The givers had TVs instead of faces. The videos reveal at least one of the delivery men, a man dressed in a blue jumpsuit, black gloves, and what appears to be brown hiking-style boots. He wears a TV set on his shoulders, positioned so it obscures his face. Pekka said police believe he had a helper, another man in a white jumpsuit who also wore a TV as he made deliveries. Quote, we determined there was no credible threat to residents and that this was strictly an inconvenience, Pekka said. It was, long pause, unique. After borrowing a truck from the county's solid waste department, a half-dozen police officers collected the television sets in about an hour Sunday, Pekka said. The county will recycle them. There are no additional costs to residents, and the incident didn't impair normal police activity, Pekka said. The department doesn't plan to investigate further, he said, although officials encourage residents to contact police if it happens again. Even if police identify TV Santa Claus, as Brooksbank's husband nicknamed the giver, authorities will not press charges. The closest offense to this would be leaving an unwanted item on public or private property, Pekka said. Quote, but I mean, one TV neatly placed on the doorstep in front of each resident. It wasn't done in a malicious manner, Pekka said. At least one doorbell camera video shared with the Washington Post appears to back that up. The video shows a man in a blue jumpsuit, a TV set perched atop his shoulders, carefully ascending some porch steps in the pre-dawn darkness. He clutches a TV in his arms and wears black gloves and brown hiking boots. The man stops at the top of the stairs, turns and squats, Olympic weightlifting style, and places the TV on the porch. He pauses for a fraction of a second, as if to admire his handiwork, and starts heading back the way he came. Halfway down, he swivels and looks directly at the camera. He cocks his head, waves 3 times, and then disappears into the night. Quote, I think it was awesome, lighthearted, and so great to have a fun story like this, even though there are so many tragedies occurring, said Brooksbank, 48, referring to the deadly shootings in Dayton, Ohio, and El Paso. I feel lucky I got a TV. Brooksbank said the neighborhood has floated a few theories to explain the TV dump. A college sports team maybe, or a fraternity prank. Pekka declined to elaborate on any theories police may be considering. It's not the first time this has happened. There was a similar TV delivery last year in Glen Allen, in the Gray Oaks neighborhood of Henrico County, which is near Richmond. The TVs appeared around the same time of year, in late August, but there were fewer of them, Pekka said. CBS 6 News reported that about 20 TVs were left on Glen Allen porches on August 23rd last year. Henrico police looked at the unexpected gifts, according to CBS 6, but never identified the giver, and, unlike in the Hampshire neighborhood, there appeared to be no footage. In the hours after Brooksbank found a TV on her porch at about 7 a.m. Sunday, her family cycled through surprise, curiosity, and momentary fear, she said. Her son, at one point, suggested leaving the house. Quote, my son was like, Mom, we have to get out of here. This is crazy. This is strange, she said. But he reversed course eventually, piling into a car with a few friends and driving around the neighborhood to film a YouTube video documenting the event. Her son soon leaves for the University of South Carolina, the family's first child to depart the nest, and his mother has been feeling a bit down. Quote, it was a nice distraction, she said. It certainly lightened the mood around here. As news of the TV giving spree spread this week, some took to social media to share their confusion. Others loved it. Still others opined this could happen only in Virginia. A handful of Reddit users proposed designating August 11th, the date of the TV drop-off, a holiday dubbed TV Day. The United Nations beat them to the punch decades ago, however. In December 1996, the UN proclaimed November 21st World Television Day. Alright, there is one for the inevitable Unsolved Mysteries reboot. I just hope if they do use that story that they actually make a full-blown reenactment of the whole thing with actors and the whole thing. And maybe I could even be cast as one of the folks dropping off TV sets with a giant TV monitor on my head. Alright, last but not least, this final article is more than 100 years old. It was published in the New York Times on March 15th, 1904. And the headline is, Wife Returned After Having Fine Funeral. Declaring that the city falsely notified him that his wife was dead and saddled him with the expense of a funeral for a strange woman, Ignacio Valente has filed a bill for $250 against the city. The Auditing Bureau of the Finance Department now has it in charge. Valente is an Italian, and about 6 weeks ago he quarreled with his wife Angelico over the way she cooked macaroni. As a result of the quarrel, the wife left Valente's home, declaring she would rather die than return. When Valente's rage had cooled, he became worried over his wife and started a search for her, reporting her loss to the police. He gave a careful description of the woman, and finally, on being notified that the body of a woman answering the description was at the morgue, he went there, accompanied by his 2-year-old daughter. He identified the clothing of the dead woman as belonging to his wife, but when shown the body, said he declared it had been changed. They all change after death, he says the morgue keeper declared. This woman was better looking than my wife, Valente says he declared. Death beautifies them all, the morgue man is said to have replied. Smothering his doubts, Valente says he had the body brought to his home, and then, in response to an old request made by his wife, got out the wedding dress used by Mrs. Valente and had the strange woman attired in it. The funeral was held, and Valente footed the bills, he declared. Notice of the event was published in the Italian papers, and the real Mrs. Valente, reading it, started post-haste for her home. Valente, on arriving home, discovered the real Mrs. Valente rummaging about for her wedding dress. What has become of it, she demanded, when Valente entered. Why, I buried you in it 3 days ago, Valente, in his surprise, replied. Real trouble followed this, and, when Valente had satisfied himself it was his real wife who stood before him, and that he had buried the wrong woman, he could only restore peace by promising to buy his wife another wedding dress, just like the one in which the strange woman had been buried. Now he demands that the city pay him $100, which he spent for the funeral of the wrong woman, $40 for wages lost through grief and because of illness that followed the shock of finding his wife alive, and $110 for the bridal costume which he had placed on the corpse, and with which sum he desires to buy a new gown for the real Mrs. Valente. He asserts that he never would have accepted the body of the other woman, whose identity is still unknown, unless the morgue keeper had forced him to believe that it was the body of his wife. Alright, there you have it. Some kooky, spooky, and weird articles that have appeared throughout the years in print, in radio, and television, on the internet, and probably a few other places in between as well. I hope that you guys had as good of a time listening to them as I had looking them all up and then relaying them to you. I hope this is a kind of a reciprocal relationship that we had for this episode. Next month, we'll get back to more of a normal gig where I interview a fellow journalist and talk about what he's doing in the field and what his experiences were like. Don't know that he'll have any spooky stories to tell, but you never know. Journalism can be a weird field. It's a lot of crazy stuff can happen out there. But speaking of spooky and weird, I do want to mention one more time the Shore Manor podcast. My wife and I are having that one going every single week this season leading up to Halloween, which will be our season 2 finale. You absolutely do not want to miss that, so be sure to check that one out. In the meantime, rate, review, and subscribe this bad boy. Put some kind words for us. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes. That really helps us out, boost the algorithm, increases visibility, and makes us look really good in the process. So please feel free to do that, and we'll make sure and give you a quick shout out and a thank you on social media. We could definitely use your help there, and we would definitely appreciate it. So as we wind things down, I'll make sure and let you guys know how you can get in touch with me if you would like to. Of course, I am on Twitter at @TheMattShore, and I am also on Instagram at @TheShore. If you'd like to reach me directly, you can do so by email at mattshore@hotmail.com. And I have my own website, mattshore.net, where you can check out all the information you could possibly want to know about me, about my books, my writing, my podcasts, and a few other things as well. And of course, Shore Manor is also on Patreon. If you're interested in getting episodes like this one in advance, along with any other sort of digital content that we may have available at any point in time, please feel free to check that out and maybe subscribe to us there and give us a little extra support. That would be fantastic, and we would definitely love you guys for that. That's at patreon.com/Shore Manor. And speaking of Shore Manor, we're on Facebook. So go check us out there at facebook.com/Shore Manor. If you're interested as well there, show a little extra support. You can even buy a t-shirt. There's a button for a t-shirt page right there on our Facebook page, and you can show all your friends how spooky and awesome you are. And believe me, if you wear a Shore Manor t-shirt, you are spooky and awesome. But I believe that covers everything right now for this episode. I hope everyone has a very safe and especially happy and fun Halloween this month. As so many people know, this is my favorite holiday. It's my wife's favorite holiday. We go all out for this thing. So we want everybody to enjoy it as much as we do. So have a good time out there. Have a safe time out there. In the meantime, keep reading and keep listening. Thanks.